Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Alan Hudson, good morning, sir. Kenny Ibbett, tell me about Kenny. You played with Kenny when, of course, he went over to Seattle Sounders in 1982, where you won the Western Division and almost took the major trophy at Soccer Bowl in 82, which, of course, today Seattle Sounders fans are still raving about.
One of the, I don't say strangest, it was, when you play against certain players and you rate them however you rate them. And I played with Kenny. I've been in a couple of England under-23 squads with him. Then I played against him, obviously, Chelsea, Wolves, Stoke and Wolves, and Arsenal and Wolves. I thought he was a good player. And then all of a sudden, when I was in Seattle, obviously captain there, and so I had a lot more responsibility, and I had a lot more to say about the team with the coach Alan Hinton, who was a brilliant coach. He bought Steve Daly from Wolves, yeah. And Steve was, as you know, the £1 million player around the time when, about a year after I left Chelsea, and which was a ridiculous fee for someone like Steve. Which he admits, hell of a lot of money. Steve came there to Seattle and didn't really scored the odd brilliant goal, which he was capable of doing because he had a ferocious shot. He would pull one out the air for you. But his overall game was, it was probably wrong on me to judge him for going for £1 million. It wasn't his fault. Yeah. That they paid, Manchester City paid that amount of money for him. And then when we broke the team up the following year, but as you did in America at that time, you kind of got a new team. Certain players come back to their clubs here, because I was only one or two players that were there full time from my move from Arsenal, and we signed Kenny right out of the blue, and Kenny came over and. He was a lovely fella. I remember getting on really well with Kenny, and I thought he would be a decent addition to our team, although we had a real good team. And to be perfectly honest, mate, he took over the place. He was absolutely superb. I couldn't speak higher of any player. He was fantastic. It just seemed as if that kind of. Sometimes they say, like I always think when I tell people about my move from Chelsea to Stoke and a new manager, a great manager, and got the best out of me, it seemed that it gave him a new lease of life, a different look at life. He'd probably been at Wolves too long, and he came to Seattle and he just took the place by storm. He seemed to be so relaxed, and in training he was a credit. Everything he did, and in all fairness, he was the one that got us to the Soccer Bowl final. He was in both legs against Fort Lauderdale. I think he scored in both games. He scored the winner at the Kingdome against them. He's just all-round game. He was superb. He kind of pushed me out of the way a little bit and took over, which I didn't mind doing because he gave us a little bit more of an edge.
You always said to me how you don't understand how good a player is until you either play with them or against them, and that seems to be the way with Kenny. You're right, he'd been at Wolves since 1968, and only Derek Parkin has made more appearances for Wolverhampton Wanderers. He said to me that he knew nothing of Seattle like you didn't before he went and signed for Alan Hinton, and he said it was an honour to play in a team with you, a player that he admired so much, and said that whenever he had the ball anywhere around the pitch, Alan Hudson was always available to receive that pass. And I think although he made it a little bit better for Seattle, you also made it very easy for Kenny to fit in there. And he was almost like, you always talk about jigsaws, final piece to that jigsaw in 82.
Yeah, it was. I've adapted to the American game. It took me a little bit, like my first season. It took me my first season to adapt because I played with far inferior players when Kenny came in. I was a big signing, and I found it quite difficult to adapt. Then I had to adapt to the American way of playing, and I had to explain to the Seattle crowd that, just look at me as your quarterback. Don't expect me to be scoring goals from here, there. You're not going to get too many frills, but I'll get the team playing. And I'll never forget. We went on a pre-season tour when Steve Daly first came, and we was down in Santa Anita, which was the most beautiful place in the world. And we were doing some practicing, and I think it was a free kick or a corner. And it was Steve had just been there about a week or 2 weeks, and I said to him, Steve, I said, where do you like playing? Because I could kind of change my game a little bit. I could push up a little bit more if I had to. I could drop deeper if I had to. I didn't really like going wide, but I'd go wide sometimes if you had to. And I expected him to answer me I like to. If I was Steve Daly, I said, well, I'm more of a roamer because he runs. I watched him play when I was injured, and he didn't know where he was going half the time. He was no plan for the game. He didn't really know. And he said, I don't really know what my best position is. And I thought that was a bit strange for someone of his age. He was 28, about 27, 28, the same as me. But with Kenny, it was I didn't have to ask Kenny.
Yeah.
I already knew because he just slotted in so simply. He was easy to play with. He was my type of player. I always loved five-a-side players. He was a five-a-side player. He was great in tight areas. He could receive it and pass it without, with his eyes closed. We were very similar in many ways, but he had the ability to, as Wolves fans would probably say, anywhere around 5 yards outside the box, 10 yards outside the box, he had a great eye for goal. Something that I never did in my career. I had a bit of a bad ankle, and that stopped me from shooting a lot. And I would try and get the ball through to somebody else in a better position. Where Kenny had the fantastic ability to curl one over the top or sneak one over the side. He had a wonderful eye for goal. And for a midfield player, people rave about Frank Lampard. That was Frank's biggest strength. Without his goals, Frank would have been probably a decent player, but his goals made him a fantastic player for Chelsea. But it was only his goals. And Kenny had that edge. Kenny could do that, but Kenny had much more to his game. He was more of a footballer. He was such a pleasure to play with, and you knew when you got the ball. I always used to look forwards for front players, but I knew when Kenny was out, if he had a 5 yard space, I had no problem playing a 1-2 with him or giving it to him and letting him get on with it. He was a fantastic addition to our team.
And left foot and right foot as well. He was comfortable striking the ball on both sides, wasn't he, Kenny?
Yeah, I think that was probably the strength of his game, that he could go either way. He could drop his shoulder to go right and go left, and vice versa. But again, back to your point, I mean, I always say to people, when they tell me about players, and I say, well, you really wouldn't know how good or bad they are, because I don't find out about players until you really get to know players when you've trained with them and you play with them, and then you get their strengths, their weaknesses, where to pass for, where not to. Obviously, the biggest example of that was Greenough at Stoke, Jimmy Greenough at Stoke. Had I never played at Stoke City with Jimmy Greenough, I would have gone through my life thinking he was quite an ordinary player. But getting to play with him, I found out we got the best out of each other, and that's what it's all about. And that's I think at the end of the show, as I've always done with you, we always come back to the same thing, and that's management, and it's all down to great management. I don't know if Alan Hinton see that in Kenny, because Alan brought so many players in and out, and some were good, some were very good, but Kenny, I would say, along with Tommy Hutchinson, who we got from Manchester City, the ex-Coventry player, who I thought was a decent player at Coventry, but he come and excelled over there. He was a fantastic addition. They were probably the two best players that Alan Hinton brought in.
I remember talking to Kenny and doing an interview for Ebra Sounder, and he talked about Toronto when they played against Kublas. There was a few of the boys that went out for a beer, Steve Daly being one of them. Steve wasn't the greatest of drivers. I think Steve wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. I'm kind of getting about Steve Daly. And also we spoke about Soccer Bowl and the night before at the gala, where you'd have a drink, and he had a suit that really would have fitted a 4'6" midget rather than the size and the frame of Kenny.
It's a very, very funny story, that one, because I remember Alan Hinton, the master stroke. I suppose most teams do it. The Soccer Bowl, San Diego was the most beautiful place, and Alan took us down there after the game at the weekend. I think we went on a.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Sunday or the Monday. The final was on the following Saturday. I was with Ray Evans, very close to Ray at that time, and we were like sidekicks, and we would go out. We went out Monday night, we went out Tuesday night, we went out Wednesday night, and Alan Hinton said no more drinking after Wednesday. So I said to Ray on the Thursday while we were training, I said, we got to have a beer tonight. I said, the game's not till Saturday. I mean, we got a history of drinking the night before the game, and, not every Friday, but we had that kind of history. And I said to Ray, I'm going to talk to Alan about it. He said, yeah. He said, why not? Because we were friends. And I said, how? I said, I think you better give us another night off. I said, because, what we can do, sitting and watch the TV, what we going to do? We'll be twiddling our thumbs, and who wants to sit around and think about the game on Saturday on a Thursday night in San Diego? It's not like being at home with the family, And Alan said, no problem. He says, Al, do whatever you feel best. Whatever you go into the game, it was like a Waddington thing, really. Waddington would have done the same thing. Yeah, go and have a beer, but don't go nuts. We'll go and have a beer. So we went out, and Ray and I went out on the Thursday night, and we called it a day on the Friday. We trained. I'll never forget, we trained on the Friday morning. We were playing head tennis, and Pele came across. Pele walked over, and he was watching us, and we were talking to Pele, and that was a bit of a lift. We were a little bit hungover, and so was Pele, strangely enough. Next thing you know, we went to the night before Soccer Bowl. You both teams attend the dinner, and they sell tickets for the dinner, and both teams march in together. And as we turned up, we all in our dinner suits. Steve Daly and Kenny turned up, and they're all over the place. I thought, what's going on here? I hope Alan Hinton don't think that I've told them that it's all right to go out on the following night. I think this was the Friday night, and we weren't drinking, but they were drinking. Kenny and Steve were a little bit, over the top, which was not a problem because New York come out and they just. I remember their best player, one of the best players I've ever seen, a fella called Bo Kajevic. He was one of the best players I ever played against, and he was off his trolley. He was just God knows how. Because he challenged us to a drink when I played for Arsenal, and he played for Red Star Belgrade, I think it was. That was in Singapore or Australia or something. And he challenged me and Malcolm McDonald to a drinking contest. So he came over and he made Kenny and Steve look sober. He was all over the place. His bow tie was round the wrong side of his neck and everything, and he come over and started talking to lads as we lined up to go into dinner and saying, you do realise that I'm getting drunk because I've got to give you a chance tomorrow, all that kind of thing. Because this geezer just had so much confidence. So that was all the lead up to the game. So I felt a little bit better knowing that Bogey was, wouldn't be at his best, which he was really the following day. But yeah, Kenny and Steve, they were like two little kids in a sweet shop on this night. San Diego, in one of the nicest parts of the world. The night before a cup final, and it was great stuff. It was, and I really think, given if we had played on a proper soccer field, as they say, we would have had a better chance. But we played on the San Diego field, which had that diamond where they play the baseball. Yeah. And that didn't suit me because I couldn't go onto the diamond because my ankle, and I got too far away from Ray, and we didn't play a normal game, and I think that kind of suited New York more than it suited us. Otherwise, we might have got a result.
Have you any recollections of the Toronto game the day before? When you went out for a drink, because Kenny said it was a bit worse for wear then. You seem to play hard and drink hard and work hard on the pitch. You've always said, Al, if you're going for a drink, you've got to put it in training, put it in the game, and you always did.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, we didn't. I wasn't an excessive drinker on a Friday night before a game. I could count on one hand the times I really got out of order, but that was for personal problems, and that was it came off once or twice, and a couple of times it rebounded on me. But you mentioned earlier on Kenny. I think Kenny might have got that wrong about Cubillas. Cubillas played for Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
Toronto had another good player, a black player. He was superb player, very, very good. But Cubillas played against us for Fort Lauderdale, and he was the one in, as you'll know, in 1970, he played for Peru, and he set the world alight in the World Cup final. And he was, for 25 minutes, he ran our back four ragged, and until we got hold of the game, and we went on to give him I think we beat him 4 at the end. Because all round we were a better team than them, but we had to someone in the defence had to get hold of Cubillas for us to do that. But Kenny probably got that wrong because his intake of alcohol, I think.
He probably did.
Probably got belly mixed up that morning for as well.
You seem to have an absolute ball out there. As I say, Kenny had a tremendous career. Started it at Bradford Park Avenue, went to Wolverhampton Wanderers, played out there in Seattle, also went on to manage as well after, and was an assessor of referees. I believe he's now retired. He was 71 on the 3rd of January, and a lot of Seattle fans thought that he took the number 3 shirt because he was born on the 3rd, but he certainly didn't. Kenny said to me, it was just a number that was available. He didn't play like a fullback, and you're absolutely spot on. I said, Kenny, you played like a trooper, and you were one of the greats of 1982 to wear that Seattle Sounders shirt.
Yeah, he wore it with great pride as well. That's what I liked about him. A lot of players that came over, thought it was like a bit of a working holiday, but that after a little while under the management of Alan Hinton, they realised that it wasn't a joke. We meant business, and that's the way it was. And strangely enough, you talk about his career. I think I wrote to him when he was manager of Walsall.
Yeah.
Asking him if he had a vacancy for a coaching job or even assistant. I didn't hear back from him. I don't know whether that they had a shortage of money. I didn't really do it for the money. I just would like to have teamed up again with him because I really liked him. He's a great lad. And then I see him at Stoke on several occasions when he was doing the referee's assessment.
Yeah.
And we just used to look at each other and laugh. And as much as to say how lucky were we to be in Seattle together and get on so well and find out. He probably felt the same way about me as I felt about him, about finding out until you play with someone, you don't realise what kind of player they are. But that year, my son says to me sometimes, how many times you play against Kenny? He said he was fantastic in Seattle, and that was something. That was a wonderful thing about our game, and going to America at that time and playing against other teams that had wonderful, unheard of, that people over here had never heard of, and say. And I didn't like it when people undermined the NASL. It was a great league. New York Cosmos had a better team. They could have won the first division in them days. Yeah. In the English first division, the players they had when Cruyff played, and Shinaglia and Bogacivic and people like that, and Nieskins, they had about 5 World Cup winners in their team. And this is what we played against. And Kenny walked into our team, and he was right up there with the best of them. And I'm so when you asked me to do the thing, have a few words about Kenny, I couldn't be more delighted because he was such a pleasure to play with and be around. He was great in training as well. He liked to laugh. He had a great sense of humour. He was great in five-a-sides. When we played head tennis, he was class. Everything he did was with a bit of class.
Al, it's been an absolute joy, a pleasure, and I'll pass on all that to Kenny a bit. It's always a bone of contention with me that players of the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, and even further back get forgotten these days by the mainstream media and football shows, but we don't. They are too good to be forgotten. So till next time, mate, thanks very much. And remember, 6 more tracks for My Life, My Music, where we take a look at the stories behind the songs that shape the career of one of world football's greatest players, you.
Thanks very much, mate. Give Kenny my best regards, and I can't wait to hear his show. He's one of the people that say if I played for 20 years, he was right up there with anyone I played with. So give him my best regards, please, Paul.
Will do. Cheers, Al. Speak soon.
All right, pal.
Ta-ra, mate.
Even on a budget, quality is non-negotiable. That's why Quince is the place to score high-end essentials at 50 to 80% less than similar brands. Get your hands on buttery soft cashmere sweaters from just $60, Italian leather jackets, and so much more. And the best part about Quince, they exclusively partner with factories committed to safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing. Elevate your style without the elevated price tag with Quince. Go to quince.com/upgrade for free shipping and 365-day returns.